The intriguing case of the Utah Jazz forgotten player, Talen Horton Tucker. And where does he fit in? Next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 bum.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps as well as on YouTube. Join the comment section. A lot of comments I expect today in regards to where you fit. I think Talen Horton Tucker fits and what it means and what his role is with the Jazz. So I'm excited to come back and look at those. And sometimes I even follow live as we debut on YouTube at 8:30 every morning. If I'm not in the gym, I'll sometimes come back and watch the comments come in live on the show. It's fun. Appreciate the community that's out there. Thank you to the everydayers who are driving that, who are all a part of it. I have to share a funny thing. So we do this. So I don't know, those of you who are ever cycle, I was road biking yesterday and coming up Browns Canyon and a brutal crosswind. So I've heard people say like in the wind, you're supposed to like, same thing with golf. You're supposed to like loosen up your grip. Okay. Who are you kidding? I went to Scotland and got so tight I couldn't hit a golf ball with the wind. And so yesterday, super brutal crosswind with big trucks going by. The construction in Heber and Camas has led to just a mammoth amount of construction trucks driving by on Browns Canyon, which is unfortunate, but reality. And so they're just tossing you everywhere. It's just kind of harrowing. And I am so sore today that literally when I went to go do this, I was like, to do the stupid drum roll. I almost thought I couldn't do it. So maybe that's another sign of getting old. It's the week of David getting old. It's guys on YouTube think I have a black eye when it's just an age spot. It's all those fun things. All right, I'm super intrigued by Talen Horton Tucker for a few reasons. So one is that Talen Horton Tucker is young, I think kind of forgotten. Like, right? If you hear a conversation about and maybe rightfully, we'll see, but we'll dig into it. But you hear, first thing is you hear somebody talk about the Jazz and their young pieces and all those things. You hear Ochai, Agbaji, and Walker Kessler, and then Collin will get mentioned. Okay, so Ochai is 23 years old and 98 days, and Talen Horton Tucker is 22. So that's the first thing that really, really intrigues me is that, like, if you look at the age, Talen Horton Tucker was the youngest player out of college to go pro, and then has spent all this time in the NBA so far in his career, in which he played for the Jazz and the Lakers, and feels old and looks old, frankly. He doesn't look like a baby face. Like, he just doesn't. And so here's a guy who's got 200 NBA games under his belt, about 45 starts, and he's only 22 years old. Collin's 24. I think, that's perfectly young enough to still be developing, and we kind of believe that that's the case. He averaged 24 a game in Cleveland and is super exciting. Was now evolving how to do that efficiently and effectively on a good basketball team. And then, and then there's a lot of Khris Dunn love after his really strong performance and his kind of endearing story to everything. And Khris is 29. Okay. So it's interesting to me that, like, when we talk about this and we talk about the guard rotation, we're talking about Jordan and Ochai, and then Keyonte George is coming, right? So and Keyonte George is still truly the baby of the group. Talen just kind of gets dropped off and forgotten, which, okay, he does have a superpower. Like, his ability with his size in a league that's getting bigger at 6'4", and he's 234 is what he's listed at. And maybe that number can come down and he actually has even a bigger superpower if he loses some weight and gains some more explosiveness, or maybe not. Maybe that is his superpower. I don't know. I always get super nervous when we decide, that person's got to shed 15 pounds. And then you actually find out, well, that 15 pounds was actually what made them special. Or we've done it the other way where you add 15 pounds and then you lose the bounce. But in the case of Talen Horton Tucker, he's got unbelievable bounce. He's got the ability to drive to the basket. He gets by guys. He's really, really kind of a powerful driving guard who tried to learn how to play point guard last year. And in the final 24 games of the year, averaged 17 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. 17 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists. He also shot 42% and 43% from 3, which is not super. We stretched him so far beyond what was a reasonable expectation in those final 24 games. He drove to the basket in those games, the 5th most of any player in the final 24 games in the NBA. The only players who drove to the basket more than Talen Horton Tucker were Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Trae Young, Spencer Dinwiddie, and De'Aaron Fox in the final 24 games of the season. There's no reason that that's the usage rate and threshold that we should ever be asking out of Talen Horton Tucker. I don't think this is an either-or conversation in any way, shape, or form. I do not think this is an either-or conversation in any way, shape, or form. Let me say that clearly. But I just gave you that Talen Horton Tucker in the final 24 games averaged 17 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, shot 43% from the floor and 32% from 3. Okay? The 32% from 3 is problematic. We'll get to that in a second. The 43 is not great. But just for perspective, because he's a similar aged player and in a different stage in their career, in the final 27 games of the year, which is the same time period, it starts, and I could, if you think that's unfair, we could move it to the final 24 and be exactly the same. Ochai Agbaji shot 40.5% and 34% from 3. And yet, the Ochai Agbaji, like future thoughts, love, which is great, through the roof. And if you take it to the same thing, where you take it the final 24 games of games played, he's 40 and 34. And Talen was 43 and 32. Neither are great. Both were being stretched way beyond where you would reasonably expect them to be as a player. Okay? So that's a little bit why. But I just think it's, and again, I don't think it's an either or. I'm just because Ochai was a rookie, because Ochai was a pick, because Ochai's his hope. I think as we traded for Talen Horton Tucker, there's one of them has this great hope, and the other one I think is the forgotten guy. That's kind of all I'm saying there. It's not, but I also would say that if you're dismissing Talen Horton Tucker and saying I don't think he's got a chance, but you do think that you're dead set that Ochai Agbaji's got a future. Where's that coming from? I think Ochai's gonna be really good. I like them both, really. Is really what you're getting to here. And I like them both personally an awful lot. I would say this about both of them are really thoughtful, interesting people. Talen's got this very interesting background where he grew up on Southside Chicago, and the community he lives on the street is now named after his grandmother for her incredible work in the community. Pretty cool. All right, so when you look at Ochai, you got a baby, 22-year-old, massive level of experience for a 22-year-old, and you've got him with a superpower, which is driving the basket, getting to the rim, and being able to get by guys. And then he's got this incredible size. He's 6'4" with a 7'1" length. He's pretty good defensively. I didn't go to B-ball index. I should have done B-ball. I was going to do B-ball index stuff on all of our players coming up. It's a great site if you don't use it. And I was going to look at B-ball index and try to see, I should have pulled it up for this, where he ranks defensively. Because it does feel like he does a pretty darn good job in the work he puts in with his length and his size of being able to cause an impact on guys. His weakness, his issue, is he doesn't shoot it well enough. He's a 32 in the last 24 games of the season. He was a 32% three-point shooter, and for his career, he's 28%. Kind of fades back, does some funky things. Needs to be he's not a good shooter, and therefore he must have the ball in his hands, or else he doesn't have the gravity that he needs to have to be successful. This is, frankly, probably in some ways why you look at somebody like Ochai Agbaji, and you see some other skills that get you pretty excited. But the fact of the matter is that's the problem for Talen Horton Tucker, is that he has to have the ball in his hands. And so now, what do you do with him? Well, let's look at the final 24 games when he was stretched. 2 fake sneezes there for those on audio. Stretched way beyond kind of how you would naturally use him, to one of the highest usage players in the NBA. And what did he do well, and what did he do not so well? And does that give us any feeling on where he fits for the future? That's coming up next as we continue on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. The show is brought to you today by our friends over at FanDuel. This is your opportunity and your chance to get into the game and take a swing at MLB. Little Major League Baseball betting for your first time. If you do it with FanDuel, you get 10 times your first bet back in bonus bets, up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend on everything from the money line to over under, who you think is going to hit the first home run. Take Shohei for the Angels, evidently. All on the app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Also, FanDuel has all the NBA over-under win numbers in there. Bunch of fun things about who's going to win most improved, who's going to be your sixth man. There's some Jazz players you certainly can take. It's all over at FanDuel. You can probably get your bonus bets on that as well, by the way, if you've never got in $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets. So sign up today, FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, so let's look at what Talen did in the final parts of this year, because it was pretty crazy. So Talen had 640 drives last year. So just head down, drive the basket. Second most of anyone on the roster other than Jordan Clarkson's 954. Clarkson was about 1.04. Sexton is our best driver, particularly if you can get Collin to do it coming from off the ball, right? So if Collin can come off the ball, driving off the wing, he's pretty great. 1.15 points per drive. That's really good, by the way. And that's where I think when you kind of look at what Collin can do, that's the best example I have of Will Hardy finding a player's superpower, is when letting Collin Sexton just drive to the basket off ball, not having to come through traffic. Super impressive. In fact, if you kind of look, I was looking at where Collin ranked. If you look at the top 100 guys, I don't know if Collin ended up with enough drives. Yes, he did. He was about 91st in drive, or 84th in drives last year. So if you look at the top 100 guys in the league last year in drives, for Collin, the best are Joel Embiid, Luka Doncic, Kevin Durant, De'Aaron Fox, Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving, Damian Lillard, Kawhi Leonard. And then Collin Sexton is the 9th best driving to the basket in the NBA. Right? I mean, pretty incredible. So again, the top drive guys in the NBA are Embiid, Doncic, Durant, Fox, Curry, Irving, Lillard, Leonard, and then Collin Sexton. DeMar DeRozan, Harrison Barnes, Giannis, Tyrese Maxey, Donovan Mitchell, Jaylen Brown. Collin's got, Will Hardy tapped in last year to Collin Sexton's superpower. It's pretty great. He then put Talen Horton Tucker out there to show his his superpower could hold, and dropped 41 one game. So after February 7th, when Talen comes back in the lineup, if you recall, he's kind of been yo-yoed in and out of the lineup. He has 382 drives. Dunn has 263. Kelly Olynyk has the third most at 171. Talen takes as I said earlier, the 5th most amount of drives of any player in the NBA in that time period. Out of the top 100, he ranks 70th. So That's not great, right? But I don't think any of us think Talen Horton Tucker is like about to be an all-star. And ranking 70th isn't great, but on the other end, I don't think there's any reason why we would ever anticipate Talen Horton Tucker to have the 5th highest drive rate in the NBA. The thing that's amazing to me there is the fact that he did have the 5th highest drive rate in the NBA. Okay? Like the fact that he actually can get it down, put it on the deck, and get by guys on a drive to the basket at the 5th highest rate of anyone in the NBA for the final 24 games is the superpower. The efficiency is not. He does not finish great at the rim. That's been a real struggle. But being able to do that first and foremost is a special skill. Now, if he's coming off the bench and he's suddenly only doing that against second-tier guys instead of first-tier guys, can you get his efficiency from 70th out of 100, so in the 30th percentile, up to the 50th or the 60th percentile in efficiency? You really might have a really nice player in as a backup guard right there. Frankly, if you can get him to finish at the rim, he's a 62.7% finisher within 3 feet, according to Basketball Reference. But if you kind of back it out and look at NBA stats and some of the player stats on him there, you end up, it's a little less encouraging with how his inability to finish at the rim. And that's where he's just got this power and strength, and now he's got to figure out how to use it. And that's where, to me, when I look at Talen Horton Tucker on this, I still see that. That's where I really say, okay, well, he's still super young. So let me not judge that, okay, he can't finish at the rim. Let me just think for a second and say, like, what can, how does he develop that? And how does he learn how to do that? Because that actually would change his game a decent amount. He shoots inside 8 feet. He shoots 52.4% at the rim. He can improve that a great deal. Just in the restricted area, he's only 57% at the rim. He can improve that a great deal. Okay. Again, he's got to improve his shooting. His above the break 3 last year was a 28.3%, which really means he has to have the ball in his hands. Okay. The other one is pick and roll. So in the final 24 games of the year, Talen Horton Tucker ran 676 pick and rolls, which is the 18th most of any guard in the NBA in the final 24 games of the season last year, from February 8th on. Again, no way do you ever want Talen Horton Tucker having that type of usage rate. And frankly, I don't think people thought he could run the pick and roll at all because the Lakers had used him as a 3-and-D spot-up wing. Khris Dunn ran 339 and Clarkson ran 173 in that point. So he ran about 67% of our pick and rolls in that time frame. He was not great at it. He ranked 79th out of the 100 most pick and rolls. Turned it over a tremendous amount, but again, not something he'd ever done before. Certainly a wild stretch beyond what he'd done. And there is a level in this league to me of the first thing you have to be able to do is be able to do it. Again, just using Ochai as our example because it's an easy, and their games are super different. Like Ochai hopefully is going to be able to shoot and different. But I don't think that Ochai could run 676 pick and rolls. We're trying. We're going to try to develop it. Maybe in 2 years in the NBA and 500 games in the NBA like Talen has, he'll be able to do that. I don't think these are the same players. I'm just using a player you guys have a reference to. Like, he had us to hold. So the fact that we said to Talen, here it is, go try this. Hadn't really ever played point guard in the NBA. Had done it a tiny bit at Iowa State, but not much. And really played kind of a center at Simeon. So just a wild, brand new experience. And not just a minor wild, brand new experience, but a throw you into the middle of the deep end, 18th most of anybody in the NBA in that time frame. Wasn't good at it. 0.92. It's not good enough. Khris Dunn was a 1.02 in that time period, and Jordan Clarkson was a 1.09. So what did we learn in the final 24 games from Talen Horton Tucker? What I think we learned is that he has the superpower, using a Will Hardy term, of to do these things. And now the question is, can he do them well? And I go back to thinking about the way the Bulls used Lauri Markkanen, which is not, I don't think that Talen Horton Tucker is a 9th pick of a draft who becomes a borderline all-NBA player. But one of the travesties of the way that the Bulls used Lauri Markkanen is that they gave him all these opportunities. He failed at them, and then they went, he can't do it. And then they really never gave him the chance again. What I'm here to say on Talen Horton Tucker is, let's see. We opened up his game last year into like this massive opportunity of stuff that he had never, ever done before in his career. With pick and rolls and drives and at high usage rates. And he turned into 17 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists with moderate to inefficiency. Let's see. What happens if it's in a regular format where he's coming off the bench and he's doing it for 16 minutes a night and he's doing it against mostly backups and he's using his size and strength? Like, let's see. And I can see where we don't see, right? Like where suddenly your starting guards, we talked about yesterday, could be Jordan Clarkson and Ochai Agbaji, and your backup guards are Collin, Sexton, and Keyonte George, and suddenly Talen Horton Tucker is out of the rotation. And you don't get it to see. I do think he has some level of a superpower that's worth tapping into that has not a lot to get him to being really, really efficient and good, is my point. Like, he can figure out how to rim finish with that size and that strength and get his footwork down. Then he's okay. If he can get his shooting to 34%, then he's good. And those are the two things you got to work on. And let's see what he did. 22 years old still. That may be the most important thing when discussing Talen Horton Tucker. All right, why the Omer Yurtseven signing was actually important, and what are the Raptors doing? We're touching on that as we continue here on Locked On Jazz. Thank you very much to all of the everydayers that jump aboard each and every day and join us on the program. I was going to do something about John Collins tomorrow. I'll do some. I have it prepared out, or I can do it Monday. But I do want to do an Ask LOJ. I feel like we haven't all chatted in a little while. And so tomorrow, Ask LOJ, if you're listening right now, send me a tweet, an X, with a hashtag Ask LOJ, and then I'll be able to get it, and we'll fire it up for tomorrow's show. Hey, below the radar, $2 million year signing, but the Omer Yurtseven signing, I think, was important for a few reasons. One is backup center should be $1 million. That's the reality. Like they're the running back, if you're following the NFL, of the NBA. Backup centers should be $1 million or $2. They should be minimum players. It's not where to spend your money. I think you can't afford to have 50, 60 million caught up in centers. The second thing is we just didn't have a backup center for Walker Kessler at all. And I don't think we want someone to play, but I also don't think Walker's playing 82. Like, guys play 73 games on average. No, guys play 71 games on average. That's kind of the average NBA player misses about 11 games. So we were at a point where suddenly, I'm not sure that that Omer starts. If Walker goes out, you might start Kelly Olynyk or do something else. But you needed something that was viable there. And there's not a lot in the market, and there's just not a lot of way to spend that. I'm not about to tell you that, the game he started against us, to me, showed me all this amazing skill. I mean, he's totally viable, which is really what you're looking for. And he did start against us last year, or I think he played 11 minutes against us, maybe didn't start, kind of out of nowhere. Like he had not been playing. I think he had played maybe one game the night before he had come off I remember actually walking around listening to Locked On Heat. And they had played in Orlando the night before, I think. Maybe when I was listening to the podcast, I know exactly where I was walking around. And they were talking about how Yurtseven had come off the bench and played for the first time all year. And then all of a sudden he played 11 minutes against us. I was like, thank goodness for Wes Goldberg and David Ramil, and the fact that I had some level of prep to know that was coming. So anyway, I just think it was actually subtly important. We just didn't have a backup point guard. I'm not about to tell you that his 22-point game against Sacramento the year prior was a sign to me that he's going to be great. Or his 22-point game against Philadelphia, I don't know. I haven't watched enough of him to really know, but he is viable. He does move well. He's played enough. He's old enough. He's got multiple college years of experience in America at NC State and Georgetown. And I actually think it was super important. Like we suddenly had a gap in our roster that needed to be filled, and you got a 25-year-old center for it. So right now, if you go to the NBA FanDuel over-under win totals, the Jazz are, like we talked about this week, the Jazz have like the 6th worst record in the NBA, which is like, you kind of like, really? It gets interesting with our draft pick situation where if it's top 10, we keep it. The other thing that is interesting about that is the Toronto Raptors are right above the Jazz at 7th. The third thing that's interesting about that, by the way, is that there's actually like 4 or 5 teams that are all kind of the exact same. Like Utah, Indiana, Chicago, there's like a bunch of them. So that, like if we were to overexceed the expectation by a slight amount, we move to like 12th, like in 2 games, which is, I think, what the Jazz are banking on. I think they're much better than everybody else thinks they are. Just fine. Which good. Like probably true. Like I think people are missing the boat a little bit on just kind of what's been built, who Walker Kessler is, how good, that kind of thing. What's interesting to me though is that Toronto is right there. Like, what is Toronto doing? Pascal Siakam's a free agent at the end of the year. There's all sorts of reports of team chemistry problems between Pascal Siakam kind of having a camp that Fred VanVleet was in, and OG Anunoby in his group having a group that they're in. Like, that's kind of what's being talked about in the league. And like Fred VanVleet's interviews in Houston kind of said it was there. Like, I always love, like, you can, like, for all these years we had the Clippers supposedly hated each other so much that they couldn't practice. And then Chris Paul moves and Blake Griffin moves. And then Chris Paul like goes through the backsides of Staples Center to go try to punch somebody else. Oh, well, evidently that was true. And then Doc Rivers in the upcoming years has actually now come out and said it's true. Like, oh yeah, we just didn't get along. We couldn't even be in the same room together. So the rumor, we'll find out if it's true over years. Well, actually, I take it back. We just found out it's true. Fred VanVleet just told us is that team had all sorts of internal chemistry, and that the young guys, Scotty Barnes and OG Anunoby, kind of had their vision of where it was going, and Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet, the veterans, had their vision of where it was going. It was totally different. Like, that's literally Fred VanVleet came out and said it. So what are they doing with Pascal Siakam? Or what are they just doing? Like, I'm mystified on, I mean, their front office has been nails. They won a championship. They pulled the Kawhi Leonard deal. They're like, Sean Woodley of Locked On Raptors did a super interesting show this week about, like, they're just experiment 6'9", where everybody's 6'9" is still there. And then they drafted Grady Dick, who's not quite that, but that might be a nice change. And, you know, really interesting point by Sean. Like, if everyone is 6'9", you're not versatile. You're actually all the same. And so Pascal Siakam is just kind of floating out there still as a potential player in the trade market. He's up for an extension that they're clearly not giving him. He's a free agent at the end of the year. And it just feels like all the Harden and the Lillard talk, like, this is the name that, to me, might skew things or move the meter the most. And from a Jazz standpoint, what I think is super interesting, he's 29 years old. He doesn't quite match our timeline. He matches Lowry's a little bit. Is, despite he's not a great three-point shooter, he did average 24 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists last year. Like, would we be willing to sign him? Like, we're willing to, is Pascal Siakam also, with his unique background of going to New Mexico State, coming from Cameroon, found by Joel Embiid. Is that right? No, can't be that. Luke Bahamute, I think, in a Basketball Without Borders, like an unbelievably kind of great story. Yeah, Luke Bahamute was there. Played basketball because all of his older brothers played. All of his older brothers ended up with Division I scholarships. He goes to New Mexico State, last pick, one of the last picks of the first round, and like just thrives. I mean, it's a great story. Is he, with that unique background, one that might decide like, oh, I don't need New York. He might. He's been in Toronto. He's been the greatest city in North America, or one of the greatest, maybe the greatest. Like this, but anyway, it's just an interesting thing. I'm just watching Toronto really, really closely. Like, I think there's a bunch of super important stories that are going on right now. And the quietness of the year, no one's talking about. The Clippers, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Clippers, Kawhi Leonard being crickets is interesting to me, as I mentioned earlier this week. Obviously, Harden and Lillard, but I think Siakam should be in that conversation just as much as everything else. And frankly, you go put Pascal Siakam on a good team as your third best player instead of as your best player. He's got to be willing to do that. The way like an Aaron Gordon went to Denver and Pascal Siakam's probably better than Aaron Gordon. Oh my goodness, does he change the landscape of what's going on there? Like frankly, if we added Pascal Siakam to go with Lowry Markkanen, we'd be pretty good. And we'd suddenly be able to do a lot of different things. Now, would we be good enough? Would it hurt our championship? Like, at some point, there's two sides of the story. At some point, we have to use our assets. At the other point, you don't want to use your assets for something that makes you kind of good. And then when you need the assets, you're short one. That would be the disaster. That's the dance that Danny and Justin are playing. Have a great one. Thank you very much. It is Ask LOJ tomorrow, so please submit your questions via Twitter at #AskLOJ. You're the best. Thanks to the everydayers who are out there and the great YouTube conversation. Appreciate all of you.